My name is Jamie Lockhart. I'm the Director of Remote Sensing and GIS Research for the Arkansas Archaeological Survey. My co-authors are Dr. Julie Morrow, Sarah Stuckey, and Bobby Perry. The title of our presentation is Community Patterning at the Greenbrier Site, Interpretations from 2021 Fieldwork. We've recorded this talk for the 2021 annual meeting of the Arkansas Archaeological Society. We'd like to thank the descendant Native American communities, cooperating landowners, and the Arkansas Archaeological Society. This presentation details recent geophysical remote sensing surveys conducted at the Greenbrier Site, an exceptionally well-preserved Mississippian town in the White River Valley. In spring 2021, we conducted a 2.5 hectare gradiometer survey with an initial aim of providing supporting evidence for previous excavations. That more limited scope has been expanded. Before we discuss the remote sensing data, we'd like to provide some context for the site. These next few slides are worthy of a separate presentation, but my comments will be just introductory. The importance of this site has been recognized for decades. Artifacts from the site are known from collections amassed as early as the 1930s. The site was formally recorded in our Mazda database in 1962. Dr. Dan Morse was interested in the site, and many survey archaeologists and society members have worked at Greenbrier. Professional and supervised excavations were conducted in 1999 and 2000 during the Arkansas Archaeological Society training program. My co-author, Dr. Julie Morrow, directed that work and has published elements of that research as shown in the previous slide. That field work identified two relatively intact, in situ, charred posts that were tentatively interpreted as the remnants of a house wall. Subsequent excavations clearly identified three exterior walls. The house appears to be generally square with rounded corners and measures approximately 6 meters on each side. Those excavations also produced an abundance of charred cane imprinted daub, and wood charcoal. Evidence of foodways included pecan, walnuts, hickory nuts, hazelnuts, and acorns, and other edibles included little barley, beans, squash, maize, and chenopodium. Fruits identified included grapes, persimmons, elderberry, and ground cherry. Ceramic types from Greenbrier include Barton incised, Park and punctate, Old Town red, and human effigy pottery. Dr. Morrow's research indicates that some of this pottery may have been imported. Weeping eye masks and marine shell gorgets from the site represent familiarity with southeastern ceremonialism and imply a broad area of communication. Lithics from the site include nodina points, triangular inscrapers, knives, grinding slabs, and ground stone celts. Some of the lithic artifacts were made from exotic Mill Creek chert, as well as stone from the Atoka geologic formation to the southwest. Radiometric dates indicate that the site was occupied within the late Mississippi period and possibly into the protohistoric period. That translates to an approximate time frame between the late 1300s and early 1600s. As shown here, calibrated intercepts trend toward the mid to late 1400s. 3IN1 is the type site for the Greenbrier archaeological phase, which our database characterizes as a poorly known Mississippian culture located in the White River Valley near the eastern Ozark Escarpment. The description notes that Greenbrier phase sites do not have mounds, and it is not known if they were palisaded. These are some of the characteristics that we'll be examining with our work. Our initial objective for the work described here was to collect multi-sensor geophysical data to complement and further inform the data collected for the Locust 3 structure excavated during the Society training programs directed by Dr. Morrow. We collected electrical resistance, ground penetrating radar, and gradiometry in that immediate vicinity. Due to the pandemic, we were making day trips to the site. After the multi-sensor data had been collected on that first day, we took time to stake and collect 2 additional grids of gradiometry with the time we had remaining. The 20-meter grid in the upper left of this image shows the gradiometer signature for the partially excavated Locust 3 structure with some outline features. We discovered additional anomalies in the 2 impromptu grids that first day. We interpreted 3 and possibly 4 more burned prehistoric structures, and we made plans to make additional day trips to expand the gradiometry in advance of the impending agricultural season. The data we'll be talking about today were collected during 4 field days using a Bardington 6012 set for 0.01 nanotesla sensitivity and a resolution composed of 50 centimeter traverses with measurements taken every 12.5 centimeters along each traverse. In processing, the data were assembled, destriped to remove heading errors, destaggered for better alignment within traverses, and interpolated to 12.5 centimeter XY resolution. The data were then georeferenced to GPS-derived UTM NAD 83 coordinates using GIS software to provide precise locations in the field. The data can be clipped to accentuate anomalies for visualization or analyzed without processing to determine the actual magnitude of each individual measurement as it was collected in the field. During our next field day, we collected 20 additional grids. We extended the survey primarily in one direction to test our theory about the site extents. We were now beginning to sense the magnitude of the site and the large number of prehistoric structures possibly involved. We identified a faint diagonal linear anomaly in the westernmost 20 by 20 meter grid that we interpreted as a partial corroboration of our hypothesized site extent, at least in one direction. We also noticed an 80 to 100 meter magnetically quiet area with no anomalies in the north central portion of this image. Our theory at this point was that the site might have had a civic ceremonial plaza. We also perceived that the structures might have been arranged in rows based on the contiguous grids on the eastern portion of the study area. The faint linear anomaly at the far west, along with the possible plaza in the central portion and the patterning of structures, encouraged us to collect additional grids as soon as possible. The next 20 grids of data provided some partial answers to our questions. The western linear anomaly had now resolved into 2 parallel lines with a possible third linear anomaly on a different trajectory, and our hypothesized civil ceremonial plaza had closure, at least on its southern margin. We now had a potential structure outside the western site enclosure. We might also be seeing an inner site enclosure in yellow to the east of the parallel line shown in red. The farmer had finished plowing all the surrounding fields, and we quickly arranged for one more field day at this site before it was plowed. This slide represents the culmination of our 2021 field work. The gradiometry consists of 63 20 by 20 meter grids, or 2.5 hectares, To date, interpretations include as many as 75 prehistoric structures enclosing a clearly defined civic ceremonial plaza. Interpretations also delineate two separate fortification arrangements indicating a probable site enlargement suggested by apparent feature superimposition. In addition to providing precise location for future excavations, these data comprise an organizational pattern that speaks to structure size, shape, orientation, density, architectural elements, temporal span, hierarchy, and more. Judging by the size of the anomalies, the roughly 6 by 6 meter structure excavated in 1999 and 2000 seems to be a good approximate average, but there are exceptions, smaller and larger. The largest clearly rectangular structure south of the plaza may exceed 8 meters on each side. The Locust 3 house Dr. Morrow and society members excavated is also a good indicator of general shape. Most structure anomalies appear square with probable rounded corners. There is variability in orientation, but some apparent patterning exists. The structures encircling the plaza appear to be oriented inward toward the plaza. Structures in our data so far average approximately 7 meters apart, with greater distances immediately south of the plaza. Excluding the area comprising the plaza, the structure density is approximately 1.3 houses per 20-meter grid, and the structures alone would occupy approximately 15% of the inhabited ground, excluding activity areas. That measurement assumes 75 houses in these data, and we believe that is a conservative estimate. The radiometric dates we discussed earlier indicate the site could possibly have been occupied during a period of approximately 200 years. We do see some superimpositioning of structures in the data, but perhaps less than might be expected. The clearest example of superimposition occurs over the inner parallel enclosure as marked by the red arrows in this slide. Admittedly, this is a somewhat extreme example of data clipping, but useful for visualization. The modern plow furrows have not been filtered out. This image is less processed and intended to accentuate all magnetic anomalies. It appears that structures were built over the interior curved double enclosure. Our present theory is that the site was later enlarged and bounded by the western straight line double enclosure. The sequence is not entirely clear, however, and archaeological testing is needed to confirm this theory. Also, although the structure density appears to decline west of the western enclosure, there are a few structures outside. It appears that the site extended further west than our current data coverage. Shown here in yellow, we think future excavations might also identify burn posts along both double enclosures. That's simply another hypothesis to be tested archaeologically. When and if the opportunity arises, these data will allow us to excavate precisely over specific anomalies. The anomalies range widely in magnetic strength, depending in large part on thermoremnant magnetism associated with burning. The darkest solid black features likely represent extensive burning that covers the entire footprint of a structure. Magnetic readings for some of these anomalies are greater than 70 nanotesla above background. Other structures show the thermal remnants of the central hearth with just an outline of the square walls visible. Some anomalies indicate individual burn posts. Still other structure-like anomalies are solid squares, but much more faint in appearance and magnetic strength. Magnetic readings for some of the fainter anomalies are as low as 3 nanotesla above background. These different magnetic characteristics indicate differential burning, different states of preservation, possibly different depths, different construction techniques, or special uses. The diverse magnetic signatures can be used to select future excavations based on specific research questions. We literally have work to do in every direction. We hypothesize that we will find additional structures. If the apparent civil ceremonial plaza is completely encircled by structures, we are not yet seeing half of the plaza. We are perhaps seeing only 1/4 of this entire Mississippian town. We hope to complete the gradiometry in the next field season. We have intentionally confined this presentation to the site itself, but we are also continuing multiscalar research that characterizes this site in the broader cultural landscape. We look forward to what we will learn and to sharing additional findings with you in the future. Every iteration of work at an archaeological site adds to the knowledge base. We believe this work renders the Greenbrier phase less poorly known. We believe that the size range for these sites will be expanded to at least 9 hectares, and that there is now evidence that the type site for the Greenbrier phase was possibly palisaded. My thanks again to my co-authors, descendant communities, landowners, farmers, and the Arkansas Archaeological Society.